Welcome to episode number 134 of the Marine Layer podcast. We welcome on the pitching ninja, Rob Friedman, to discuss all things Mariners pitching so far this season. We also have our two Mariners storylines. Brant Brown gets fired, and we're also starting to see the results of the driveline version of Ty France here in 2024.
Here's your guys' reminder. Stay on top of all of our content. You don't want to miss any of it. To do that, make sure you download these episodes. If you're listening to the podcast, that's on the audio side. Leave a 5-star review, leave a written review. It helps us out a bunch. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, hit subscribe, leave us a comment, all that good stuff. And then check us out on social media too, where we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. 1-1 from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording Monday afternoon, June 3rd. And Lyle, I think the Mariners are fixed.
All we needed was a good old home series against the Los Angeles Angels. That'll fix any team.
Oh, thank you, Ron Washington. Thank you, Artie Moreno. Thank you to Mike Trout for taking the series off. I'm going to be honest. We've seen some bad Angels rosters. I don't recognize half their players.
I'm standing out on the field this past weekend, and I'm befuddled. I recognize Zach Neto. I recognize Logan O'Hoppe. I recognize a couple of pitchers, Griffin Canning. But, yeah, dude, there's a lot of guys that would walk by or that were on the field. I'm like, who are you? It's unbelievable.
It is pretty unbelievable. So, really, that's all it took. The Mariners just needed to play the Angels to snap out of an offensive funk, or in a playing funk too, and have a really nice homestand. A 6-1 stretch to finish out this play at T-Mobile Park before they head to Oakland tomorrow on Tuesday. Man, this AL West stinks.
It's bad.
It's bad.
Which is
bad.
great.
I know that's the bottom, but if you had the White Sox and the Angels play 15 times, is it 7-7?
I'm trying to think. I feel like, is it crazy to say the White Sox roster has more upside than the Angels?
Yes, because the White Sox are by far the worst offensive team in baseball.
Okay, but I'm thinking this Angels team without Mike Trout, without Brandon Drury. I'm thinking the team we just saw this weekend.
So the White Sox do have Crochet. He's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone you could say on the Angels that is pretty good?
Mike Trout.
That plays.
O'Hoppe.
Yeah. We're struggling here a little bit. It's not good. It's
White
not
Sox
good for.
I mean, White Sox have Luis Robert when he's healthy.
Yeah. When, if.
Yeah.
Then it's certainly a thing, but yeah. So the Angels certainly played at T-Mobile Park this weekend. That's about all we could say about their performance. And Cole Tucker pitched. Good for him. Two-way player. I know he said he wanted to, when we talked to him in spring training, we had him on for a social clip. He wanted to get to 100 career home runs, but now he can tout that he has a 0 ERA.
You might as well just call him Shohei.
Yeah. So Shohei is dating Vanessa Hudgens. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for Cole.
Yeah.
Before we get into our storylines, let's touch on some breaking news here on Monday. The Mariners sent Jonathan Clase back down to AAA to get him some at-bats every single day. And replacing his spot on the roster, they sign former Washington Nationals outfielder Victor Robles, a former top 5 prospect. Really toolsy, but he hasn't hit much at the big league level. Is this, Lyle, do you think this is something that's going to be a week and a half, 2-week thing for Victor Robles, or is there a chance he stays on this roster longer?
It's tough to say. You know, I don't want to say I called this, But when I saw the move of Jonathan Clase's being optioned to Tacoma and there was nothing corresponding, something was up about that in the sense of, well, if they had sent him down, but we're planning to call somebody back up, you figured you would have seen in the tweet or in the update that Cade Marlowe was going up or Samad Taylor was going up. It wasn't like that. It was just Clase being sent down. So I said to myself, could it be a small trade? Or we also know Victor Robles just got DFA'd by the Nationals. Could the Mariners be interested in him? Lo and behold, a little while later, it was true. The Mariners signed him. He's now a member of the organization. I would say, to answer your question, it is likely more short-term. We'll see what happens when Jorge Polanco gets back. If I had to guess, this could be more of a short-term signing for somebody to give him a little bit of speed, give him some defense, and just to have somebody off the bench that's a pretty good athlete.
They don't get faster per se because Clase, as we know, is an elite speed guy. Victor Robles, when he was a prospect, was an elite speed guy, but year by year, he's slowed down a little bit. So he's not quite that, but a once-a-week outfielder, like, sure, he had a 112 WRC plus last season. That was his best mark. It was only in 30-something games, but he did have that mark last season. He doesn't hit for power. He was never a power guy, even as a top 5 prospect. Like, this dude was up there with Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Fernando Tatis Jr. in terms of prospect. Like, talented dude. He was the dude who was supposed to come in after Bryce Harper left along with Juan Soto and transform that Nationals outfield. Well, Soto took the reins. Robles never really did. Yeah. So the hitting thing really hasn't worked out for him in his career. Power's never come along. He's never hit for a high average. He hasn't gotten on a base a ton, although in a small sample this season, he has gotten on base a little bit more. So there's not much for him really to offer besides the fact he's still got a tiny bit of speed, and that he is a big leaguer who will probably play once a week. And it's someone you can afford to play once a week opposed to Jonathan Clase, who you want playing every day down in Tacoma.
Isn't it funny how that works? That Juan Soto, in terms of prospect rankings, was where? In the 40s or 50s when he got called up, and Robles was top 5.
Yeah, I think he was top 35 when he got called up. Because remember, like, Juan Soto's ascension was really quick.
Yeah.
So they didn't even have time to move him up the prospect rankings before he debuted.
Right, because he played, 10 games in Double-A. The original plan was the Nationals said, all right, we'll call him up for 2 weeks just to fill the void of an injury. And once we get everybody back healthy, he'll go back down. But then they realized after 2 weeks, well, he's hitting a little too well for us to send him back down. I guess we can keep him a little longer. And then a couple more weeks go by. It's like, all right, I guess he'll stay for the time being, till it got to the point where they were like, this guy's just one of the best hitters on the entire planet. And he never went back. So,
right. And Victor Robles, when he comes up, had never had that success at the big league level.
Right. Now, I will say 2 notes on Robles. He has been, for the most part of his career, a very good defender, oftentimes an elite defender. He had a year where he had 21 outs above average. He was that good. That was back in, I believe, 2019. Yeah, 2019. Last year, he had an uncharacteristic year in the field where he wasn't all that strong. He's been a little better this year, but I'm assuming the Mariners are banking on the fact that in the past he's been a very good defender and he has a very good arm. He does hit lefties a little bit. So look at these numbers in his career, even though he has not had much offensive success. Last season, small sample size, but 2023, 146 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. 2022, he put up a 111 WRC plus. I would guess you'll see him face some left-handed pitching when he gets in the lineup. And that's kind of what he profiles as. A little bit of speed, a little bit of defense. Maybe he can hit some lefties. Now, I would say it's going to look something like this before we start to move on. I would guess that him and Ryan Bliss now will be somewhat compared in terms of the production and the success they have over the next week or two until Jorge Polanco gets back, because the Mariners have options when he gets back. When Polo's healthy, they could send Bliss back to Tacoma, keep Robles if he's playing well and adding value, and Demo stays more in the infield. Or they could keep Bliss, DFA Robles, and Demo goes back to playing more outfield when Polo's back. So I would guess those 2 guys are kind of battling for a spot over the next couple weeks.
I think Bliss probably has a little bit more leeway than Robles does. I'm just not quite sure Robles has that elite defense still in him. I could be wrong. but most of what profiles for his good defense, which is his speed, he's still got his arm, but his speed has gone down every single season since 2019. You mentioned his really good offensive year. Well, if you go look at 20, 21, 22, 23, now here in 24, every season he's losing a tick off that top rail speed. When he came up, he's supposed to be an incredible defensive center fielder, and he's not playing center field in Seattle. Maybe that helps him. Maybe it ends up doesn't. So we'll see, right? The Mariners have nothing really to lose by this. It just didn't make much sense overall to have Jonathan Clase on the roster not playing, because it hurts his production when they're calling him up. It's like, well, we need you on the big league roster, especially to hit right-handed against lefties. But then he's not playing and he's not developing. And that's a guy who needs developing. Robles, we have a pretty good idea of who he is by now. If Robles was going to break out into the star he was as a prospect, he would not be a Seattle Mariner right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right about that. He's probably not going to be that guy now ever in his career. I think the Mariners are just hoping to get something out of him for what he still does bring. And again, while he's not a phenomenal bat by any standards at this point, he can hit lefties a little bit, or at least he has in the past. So we'll see what the next 10 to 14 days look like for him. But you're right. If it turns out that he's not doing much when Polo's back, he may not be on the roster anymore. It may be a short-term thing. We'll have to see.
The other big news that happened this week, that happened on Friday as we get into our Mariners storylines, Brant Brown, who the Mariners brought in the offseason, and we highlighted that it was so unusual that the Mariners brought a coach from outside their organization onto the big league staff. He was the offensive coordinator. He was a bench coach. He helped with game planning and in-game adjustments, and he was relieved of his duties on Friday. Not utterly shocking, Lyle.
I was shocked at first. I think we were both shocked at first to see the news. No,
I'll say I was in a sense that the Mariners don't normally make decisions like this, but something needed to change. Like we had just watched that Astro series and Spencer Arrighetti dominate the lineup, just dominate again. And they had already tried. Scott Service had mentioned they tried different approaches with messaging and stuff earlier in that week while Brant Brown was still employed, but like they did have to change something, right? In the reaction I made for our social media accounts, I did say it was shocking because in terms of in-season coaching changes, the last one the Mariners franchise made was when they fired Howard Johnson in 2015 and hired Edgar Martinez. That was it. That was a while ago, Lyle. It was 9 years ago. They did that. That was pre-Jerry DePoto regime. And Jerry's production on his roster hasn't always been good enough where people were like, oh, fire this, fire this, fire this. Like it could have happened sometime, but it hadn't until now. So I don't know if it was the fact it was almost too much information for the players. There's an interesting nugget from Daniel Kramer that we'll get into here in a second, which highlights maybe a little bit more of this, whether it was too much information for the players, maybe a little bit of over coaching, where they having a position you maybe didn't need to help out this offense. But overall, Lyle, when you have an offense that to that point was 30th in strikeout rate, 22nd in WRC plus, 24th in weighted on-base average, 24th in slugging, 27th in on-base percentage, something had to change.
You couldn't roll with that all year. You cannot put that much stress on your rotation all season long with an offense full of unbelievable talent just not carrying their weight. Yes, something had to change. And sometimes firing a hitting coach is a bit of a scapegoat move. Will that end up being the case with the Mariners? We don't know. We're going to have to see what the offense looks like in the next 2 to 3 months or the rest of the year and find out. But you're right that something had to change. And even though you heard Mitch Haniger talk about, look, this isn't all on Brant Brown. He did his job. We as players have to do more. Even though there were players sticking up for him, they needed something to either ignite a fire under the players' backside, or they either needed to light a fire or they needed a change in philosophy. Maybe they feel like doing this does both. We're going to have to wait and see.
I don't know if the philosophy changes, but maybe the messaging does. So Daniel Kramer of MLB.com pointed out that Brown was known for his quote-unquote unorthodox methods of messaging to players, which made him a coveted hire. But those messages, obviously, were not landing well. I don't know if that's overcomplication. I know he presented a lot of numbers to players pregame and scouting and attacking starting pitchers, and obviously didn't work. But we've seen the results against starting pitchers. They have gotten shredded by average starting pitchers this season. Maybe they're overthinking, maybe not. But in the end, when you have this many proven hitters who are hitting so far below what they have done in their past, something is not resonating in there, and something needs to either simplify or change. And the Brant Brown decision was that. So the other two hitting coaches, Jarrett DeHart and Tommy Joseph, will stay. They'll take on increased roles, and Scott Service mentioned they are going to make a hire in-house to add the extra set of hands that Brown leaves behind on this coaching staff. So now it's up to the Mariners players, I would say, for this season. So the coaching change has been made. But you and I both know they're not going to make another in-season coaching change. I'm surprised they made an in-season coaching change, even though it had to happen. Just thinking of how do things actually change? Does it actually solve anything changing a baseball coach in the middle of the season after you've spent all offseason trying to implement this? Perhaps we'll see. So Tommy Joseph and Jarrett DeHart will keep their jobs. But now, again, it's on the players to take this new messaging and run with it and improve better offensively.
Yeah, change in philosophy is not the right word because it's still mostly the same hitting group. DeHart's been there forever. Yeah, you said Tommy Joseph is still there. So yeah, change in philosophy is not the right word. But yes, a coaching change and probably a bit of a messaging change. Because let's add one thing to what Daniel Kramer reported too. Also in that blurb, he said, some of Brown's ideas in pregame meetings became too complex for the players. I think that's an important line. I think that means that maybe players felt like there was just too much information being thrown at them that was taking away from just, all right, go attack, go grip it and rip it. Like, you need a balance. You've got to have a plan going up there, but you can't have as big of analytics and sabermetrics people as the two of us are. You can't go up there trying to solve an equation in your head and also try and hit the baseball. That's not going to work. So maybe they felt like they needed a little bit more of a balance.
Ryan Davis said it best. When you step in the box, all that stuff goes out the window. You just got to compete. You got to stay alive. And that's why at times I think the Mariners have done better against relief arms than they have against starters. Relievers come in, you have less of a, predetermined thought process against that guy. Well, starters you're planning for most of the time. So that could be one thing. It could be quality of pitcher as well. And to people pointing at the series against the Angels, we did joke at the beginning that they got fixed. It is kind of hard to make an assumption based off of 3 games against the Angels, which happen to be their best offensive series of the season. Coincidentally, best strikeout series of the season. Coincidentally, so far. It is funny how that all works out. Think about this. Again, in that series against the Angels, first time all season they had scored 5 or more runs in 3 straight. All season. We're a third of the way through the season. First time all year they scored 5 runs in 3 straight. They struck out just 18 times in that series against the Angels. That's the fewest strikeouts in a 3-game stretch they'd had this season. And that was after they had a almost record-setting strikeout pace against the Astros. Just the series before.
Do you think it's going to be hard to judge the Mariners offense in the next few weeks? Because we talked about this on the live stream on Sunday, which if you guys don't know, come hang out with us on Sunday nights, 7 p.m. on Instagram, YouTube. We take all your guys' questions, basically just hang out and go live. This is the Mariners schedule in June, or at least some of it. They just played the Angels this past weekend. They have the A's for 3. They also have the White Sox at home for 4. They have the Rangers for 3, a little bit tougher, but they're going to see them at home. And the Rangers are still under 500. They'll have a tougher series against the Royals this week, too. But then they also have the Marlins. And then they finish with the Twins and the Rays. All right, I jumbled that a bit together. The point with that being, the Mariners this month see the Angels, the A's, the White Sox, and the Marlins. So they should jump on all those teams. So I would say the best way you can judge what this offense is currently looking like and where they currently sit in terms of improvement will be best judged by some of the tougher teams they play. Let's see what they look like against the Royals. See what they look like against the Guardians. Let's see what they look like against the Rays, even the Rangers. I think that'll be the best judging meter.
Yeah, we might have to wait until next month in July. I think like July overall is a good offensive month in baseball. But yeah, it's just like, especially like the end of next week would have been a good one. You get 2 solid weeks post Brant Brown. Like, what does it look like? Even if it's a small sample, are they being more aggressive? Are they walking more? Are they swinging at better pitches? Is the whiff rate down? All these things. But I'm like, it's the A's and the White Sox.
Yeah.
So that I can't do that. And again, it's like the watching the Angels this weekend. It's like, that is not a Major League Baseball team. So even if they've done all of these great things, I really, unfortunately, don't think we can draw any assumptions from this.
Well, and I will say, again, I hate to go glass half empty here, but Griffin Canning had a pretty good month of May. I know his overall numbers for the year are not good. He had a good month of May, and the Mariners still struggled against them. They had some runs late off the bullpen, and they had one Luke Raley solo home run that put him out to a 1-0 lead. Maybe the best thing we can do is, you know what? Okay, thinking more about this, here's what we should all do. Maybe we'll have to circle back to this at the end of the month. Let's judge what the Mariners offense looks like from June 14th until the end of the month. Because yes, they play the Marlins in that stretch, but in that time period, they have the Rangers, the Guardians, the Rays, and the Twins. Let's judge what the offense looks like as a whole in what will be about a 2 to 2.5 week stretch in that time. That'll give us a better idea.
And I'm sure many of you remember what the Twins and the Guardians pitching staffs did to this offense earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So, will this ignite a fire? Hopefully. We're going to have to wait and see. We're going to need a much bigger sample size than 3 games at home against the Angels. But you play who you play, and the Mariners sweeping the Angels, positive. Absolutely
very
positive.
much.
Yes. So before we get to our second storyline, let's take a pause here. We're going to talk to you guys about our friends over at Pagacci's Pub 85. Mariners are heating up. What did we just say? They won 3 in a row against the Angels. They're in first place. They've got a nice lead. They're a fun team to watch right now. Why don't you go out, watch some games with your friends, and head over there to do it? If you head over to Pagacci's Pub 85, you'll get some good drink specials. Show up early, too, because if you go during happy hour, 2 to 6 p.m., drinks are $3 and $4. Those are great deals. You can play pool. You can play darts. You've got everything you need. That's all over at Pagacci's Pub 85 in Kirkland. So, we got to talk about Ty France, because this dude just put together a phenomenal month of May. All these people on Twitter ready to write him off a month into the year, 3 weeks into the year, saying that it's time to move on. And look, I mean, we understand. We understand that it wasn't the best year in the world for him last year. Didn't get off to a super hot start. But guess what? Sometimes these driveline results and trainings take a little bit of time to put into action. Now we sit here on recording June 3rd. Ty France put up a 142 WRC plus in the month of May.
He's ahead of the curve. JP took a lot longer than this to turn it around offensively last year. We highlighted this. We talked about Ty France early in April. I think it was the second week of the season, second or third week of the season. We talked about Ty France, but it was a different conversation. So the basis of that first conversation, I remember, Lyle, his Savant page was amazing. He had been hitting the ball extremely hard the first couple weeks of the season, and that was good because that's what Driveline strives to do. He had talked about how he added 3 miles per hour in his bat speed. Amazing. So that's what that first one was, but the results weren't really there yet. And I said either the page normalizes and his stats go down, or it stays up and his stats go up. Well, it's kind of in a mix of both, because if you just take the Savant page and you look at it now, he looks like about an average hitter, give or take. Is that fair? He looks about average when you take a look at his current Savant profile. But the results he's getting and the improvements he's making in specific areas, especially here in the month of May, are very similar to what we saw from J.P. Crawford last season. So let's compare to J.P. last year. So J.P., first 3 months of last year in 2023, was fine offensively. He was better than his previous 2022 self then, but he wasn't quite the J.P. Crawford we saw in the second half of last year. It took J.P. Crawford until July to really break out offensively and see the results of what he had worked so hard at Driveline at. Ty France, it's only taken a month for him to get to a 142 WRC+, which is one of the best marks he's had in his career. If we want to shorten the sample size too, Since May 13th, Ty France has a 178 WRC plus. That's pretty good.
That's really good. And can I contextualize the JP thing here a little bit too, just so people have an even better idea? From opening day through the end of June last year, JP Crawford had a 714 OPS and a 108 WRC plus. So to your point, that is about what he had done over the course of 21 and 22. Slightly above average hitter, nothing crazy. From July 1st till the end of the year last year, JP Crawford put up a 915 OPS and a 159 WRC plus. So yes, JP Crawford finished last season top 15 in all of baseball in weighted runs created plus. Most of that was driven by a ridiculous second half. And you just said it too. Ty France did not wait around till July to have that happen. No, he had a tough first month, but he turned it around quick in the month of May because all of a sudden here, he has been awesome.
And so here's the things that that are similar from Ty France's offensive profile and JP Crawford's offensive profile. Where's Driveline affecting them? So they've both seen jumps in average exit velocity. Both have seen jumps in hard hit rate. The chase rate has improved as well, and so has the barrel rate. So they're getting. So in summary, let me revert myself on the chase rate. The chase rate, I think, so in terms of chase, it gets better, but they do swing and miss a little bit more. So Ty France is sacrificing a little bit of his contact ability for better plate discipline or better swing decision and harder swings overall, which don't necessarily result in the most contact, but it results actually in a higher quality of contact. So he's hitting the ball less often, but he's hitting it harder and he's hitting it at a more optimal angle, as we see with the increase in barrel rate. And that's a good thing to see because that's what first basemen need to do. They need to hit the ball hard and they need to hit the ball in the air. Ty France is not going to be Pete Alonso, but his past power production was only acceptable really for a first baseman if you were going to hit for a high average and get on base a lot, which last year he didn't do. But this year, he's got 7 home runs already. Note that Ty France's career high in home runs is 20, and he's on pace to beat that record by a little bit.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. And honestly, let's put this into context a bit again, too. Ty France used to strike out under 20% of the time. Now he's striking out at about a 23.5% clip. That's really manageable. If you're going to have Ty France hitting the ball out of the ballpark, racking up a lot more doubles, hitting the ball harder, he's also walking a tad bit more than he was before. If you're going to get all that, and he's going to strike out a little bit more often, I know the Mariners are already striking out a bunch, but guess what? You live with that to get what is much closer to peak Ty France. 23% strikeout rate is perfectly manageable. And if Ty's going to hit 20-plus bombs, he's going to put up an OPS over 800. He's going to put up a 125 WRC plus again for the year. I'm signing all the way up for a slightly increased strikeout rate. Guess what? His WRC plus right now is at 110. It was really low after the month of April. He took that thing way up. Now he's been 10% above league average as a hitter for the whole year.
Just to context the power surge this month, he had 5 homers in May. He'd only done that twice in his career. Did that in April of 22 and June of 21. That's it. It's the only time we've seen power like that from Ty France. It feels like now, though, because of the other numbers, feels a little bit more sustainable. He's no longer up there hitting for average. He's trying to do some damage. That's what he's doing. I will say his launch angle did not increase like JP's. His is pretty similar. JP almost doubled his launch angle last year to hit for more power. JP doesn't have quite as much raw power as Ty France does. So he's got to, pull it and hit it in the air a little bit more than Ty does. Ty's still got a little bit more line drive in his swing than JP does. But that doesn't still mean he can't hit for more power because their numbers are saying he's hitting it as hard as he has in his career.
You want some more reason for Ty France optimism too?
Sure.
So a big change for Ty this year compared to last year is he's doing damage on sinkers and sliders. He wasn't doing that last year. He's done a pretty nice 180 in terms of the results he's had on those pitches. But he's not hitting four-seam fastballs right now, really at all. He's slugging about 260 against four-seam fastballs, 266 to be exact. I don't think that's going to sustain in a positive way. That should go severely up. Even last year when Ty was struggling, he slugged a little over 340 against fastballs, four-seamers.
Yeah.
So
and if you look at what JP
all that combined, just to wrap this up, if he's going to hit this well, Ty France in his career has crushed fastballs in his best seasons. 21, 22, he dominated against four-seamers. So if all of a sudden he's really turning this whole thing around and he's already hitting two-seamers and sliders, when he starts hitting four-seamers, we're talking about real peak Ty France all of a sudden again. All that combined, and you can have a Ty France that was the guy he once was in 2021 or the first half of 2022.
And what was the pitch driveline JP Crawford was crushing last year? It's four-seam fastball.
Mm-hmm.
That was his pitch.
Yeah. So again, give it a little time. I don't think there's any way in the world Ty France ends the year slugging 266 against four-seam fastballs. That seems nearly impossible. I think there's only room for that to go severely up. So let's see what it looks like at about the All-Star break. I bet you it'll look a lot different. So with the way Ty France is hitting now, it does have the potential to change some things for how the Mariners will approach this trade deadline and what the roster could look like after the All-Star break. I started to think about this the other day. Briefly mentioned it on the live stream. I texted you about it. You said you were all game for it. So let's present it here, see what everybody thinks. How would you feel about this iteration of the Mariners offense post All-Star break? If Ty France continues to hit like this, what if the Mariners do as follows? The Mariners turn Mitch Garver into the backup catcher. He plays twice a week and just faces lefties where he does his best damage. Ty France stays at first base doing what he's doing. You call up Tyler Locklear, assuming he continues to hit in AAA. Him and Ty split time between first base and DH. And the bat you go trade for is a corner outfield bat, let's say Brent Rooker, rather than a first base bat. I think that's got a chance to do some damage.
So let's start position by position. Let's start at first base, because we just highlighted France. If Ty is hitting like he does for the rest of the season, he should play every single day at first base, bar none. Okay.
Well,
catcher.
All I meant with that is with Ty and Locklear potentially splitting time at first base. That's not taking Ty France out of the lineup. That's just getting him some days off his feet. It gets Locklear some playing time in the field. It's just like it's even playing time.
He should be playing every day, though.
Yeah,
is the summary there.
Either at first base or DH. Yes, Ty should be in the lineup every day.
Right. Presuming he hits this way the rest of the season. So yes, okay, that's good. So then you're taking your DH and you're moving him behind the plate in Mitch Garver. So I'm assuming Seby's off the roster at this point. So Garver goes back there and he is your backup catcher. First of all, I'd mentioned it on last week's podcast that I liked what I saw from Garver behind the plate. He looked fine, looked serviceable back there in a hopes to wake up his bat. It's like, okay, so when the Mariners face lefties on the mound, that's a reason to get Mitch Garver back behind the plate and give Cal Raleigh a day off. It is as much as getting Garver and his 122 WRC plus against lefties in the lineup behind the plate and like less thinking at the plate and more optimizing Mitch Garver for success both on defense and on offense as well. And this also ties in to give Cal Raleigh some more days off because this dude, I mean, is just getting beat up more and more and more, and he could use some days off. If Cal could get a couple of days off a week, he would really benefit from that. I think he would because he continues to take a beating. He had another one off the bottom of his hand on Sunday. I mean, he is just taking an absolute beating. So with Mitch Garver going back behind the plate would allow for that. Okay, then so that's those three, and then trading for like a Brent Rooker corner outfield, like yeah, because that's something the Mariners could need. And Luke Raley's been good. Dom Canzone's been good this season when he's been on the field. But the Mariners don't have that high upside corner outfielder that can anchor. I don't know if anchor is the right word because these guys aren't supposed to anchor a lineup. But the corner outfield production they've had this year has been average to slightly above average offensively. If they want to go out there and make a true splash and really at the deadline add to this lineup and make themselves significantly better, this solution right here gives you that flexibility to go out there and grab a guy in a corner outfield like Brent Rooker So then I think that makes a whole lot of sense.
And we didn't even tie in Locklear that much here. You're talking about a guy that, look, he's only had about a week in Tacoma so far. But if he continues to do what he's done at every level of the minor leagues, if he's played 40 or so games in Tacoma by the trade deadline, and he's got another 130 or so WRC plus, if not higher, how can you not bring him up at that point? And with all the puzzle pieces aligning together the way we're outlining them, he's got room to play. It's not taking away playing time from Ty France. It lets Mitch Garver optimize his strengths, and they can still go trade for a real outfield bat with the potential for Locklear to come up and provide this offense a real jolt with hit and power.
Now, I'm assuming this means at that point that second base is still not a pressing issue.
No, you have to roll with Polanco at that point.
Right.
And again, I don't think the Mariners are moving on from him this year.
I don't think so either, but I'm assuming nothing drastic changes in 2 months. Like, we don't look at 2 months like there's a certain current Oakland A starting every day at second base for the Mariners. That's what I'm assuming.
Okay.
I'm assuming things are fine at second base in 2 months, whether it's Ryan Bliss, whether it's Jorge and Polanco and Ryan Bliss splitting time, whether it's just Jorge Polanco, however it is, that the issue at second base is not bigger than saying, okay, we're okay, like supplementing our corner outfield spots, which they have a lot of corner outfielders. They just don't have a Brent Rooker level corner outfielder right now.
Right. I got to tell you, I like that idea in terms of the Mariners taking a jump offensively. I think that could do a lot. And again, I think that fits a lot of puzzle pieces in terms of, again, you're keeping Ty France around. You're getting Locklear's time. You're optimizing Mitch Garver. You're still trading for a real bat. Feels like we're checking a lot of boxes here.
Yeah. Certainly. Like, I like the idea. I do. And it gives it, I think the finding a pathway for Locklear to play in the big leagues this year, which I think you and I both think he will, it's going to necessitate something creative because the current Mariners roster cannot accommodate him because he's not playing third. You're not moving Ty France over to third. You have a DH and you have a first baseman. So there's no spot for him, barring a trade. So if you want to find a spot for him on the big league roster this year, this is what's going to need to happen. Or a version of this is what's going to need to happen.
Right. And it's got the potential to be a really good version.
So that's all hitting, Lyle. But with Pitching Ninja, we did ask him a hitting question this time, which was fun. Actually, I think we asked him a couple of hitting questions. But you know him as Rob Friedman. He knows just about everything about pitching. And he could not emphasize enough when we were having him on how much he loves talking about this Mariners pitching staff. And we got into it. We were able to, ask him about some more specifics like we did last time when we chatted with him last year. It's a lot of fun having Rob on, one of the more notable guests we have. So we really appreciate some of the time that he spends with us to break down some Mariners pitching. I really don't think there are many people who do it better than he does. And it's also good timing as well that Ryan Bliss makes his debut in the window that we have Rob Friedman on. Because as he explains in this interview, he's got a great connection to Ryan Bliss. He's a huge Ryan Bliss fan, and he speaks glowingly of the Mariners' second baseman.
Yeah, he does. Such an awesome dude. You guys see him plenty on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you follow him. And he's got a huge following for a reason. He's smart. He's creative. He is certainly a ball knower. We love having him on. We love having him on, talking pitching with them, talking Mariners pitching with them. And we don't just do rotation. We get into some bullpen talk too, because there's some guys in that bullpen with some really, really disgusting stuff that we wanted to ask him about. And he hits it all really well. That's why he's one of our favorite guests to have on.
Let's not keep you any longer. Let's get to our interview with Pitching Ninja, Rob Friedman. All right, we got the Pitching Ninja on, Rob Friedman. He's a pitching analyst for Fox Sports, Major League Baseball, Peacock, and FanDuel. You can hear his new podcast, The Baseball Dojo, that he does alongside another friend of the podcast, Michael Fisher of Codify. Rob, thanks so much for taking some time to join us here today. Wanted to start you off with something that I don't know how you process. How have you filled the Matt Brash-sized hole in your heart this season?
Oh my God. There's been so many holes in my heart with my hearts. I don't have more than one. Maybe I do have more than one heart. with all these pitchers going down from, we don't have Spencer Strider, Dustin May hasn't thrown a pitch, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, Matt Brash. It's all just pain. It's pain for me. And luckily there are other guys that have stepped up, but there's nobody of Matt Brash's caliber slider. I mean, it's just not just going to have to cry.
Well, I guess the good news is, from what they say, it'll be a little less recovery time than some starters. Like for relievers, they think it'll be a 12-month thing. So hopefully he can get back by about this time next year because, we miss watching them, that's for sure. And the Mariners could use them.
Baseball's better with Matt Brash in it. So, yeah, absolutely. Want him back as soon as possible. Great dude. Nasty stuff. Great combination.
We mentioned your podcast on the start. I want to get into some pitchers here in a second. But we mentioned your new podcast that you started with Michael Fisher and your producer, Will, I believe. And you guys have been doing that for a couple months now. You had the old Pitching Ninja podcast before. Now this is a new exposure. What did you want to accomplish with this new show?
Really just breaking out, the goings on every week, diving into pitching even deeper than I had. I mean, Fisher obviously never leaves any stone unturned. And between both of us, we probably see every pitch multiple times in any given week. So it's a fun discussion. I mean, I like bouncing stuff off him. I think he's a very smart guy. Does some great analysis and great pitch mapping for pitchers. So he brings the stats side of it, and I can bring the description of visual side, my overall impressions of stuff. And Will's just pure comedy. So no, it's fun. I mean, we all get along well. We actually rented a house together during spring training and hung out with the Mariners a lot. So that was a blast.
Yeah, it was fun to seeing you guys walk around the patio. Unfortunately, we missed you guys by like a week. It would have been fun to run into you down there. But so cool that you got like that patio opportunity. We did some content on that area too. So super cool. So one of the guys I think both of us talked to down there at spring training that I want to start with is Bryce Miller. He has this new splitter that he's been throwing this year that's been really good, but it's almost half splitter, half knuckleball. How does that work?
The Mariners, especially he and Gilbert, have perfected the very low spin knuckleball splitter. And partly it's because of how deep they put it in their hands. And it's one of their focuses, take spin. They learn off each other really well. All those guys do. Kirby, you watch them get together, and this is just what they do. They're like experimenting with thumb position. I know they studied Kodai Senga a lot, his grip, and looked at my interview with Kodai Senga and dissected that pitch and then made their own changes to it. But yeah, it's a very low spin, wicked pitch. And he's turned into a guy, he was Mr. Pure Fastball, and now he's just not anymore. He's a pure pitcher and love the way he challenges guys. I think that splitter's a great pitch for him because to me, splitters work well when someone's very aggressive. Works really well with a guy that throws aggressive fastballs because you don't have to let anything off. You're the same aggressiveness. Hitters are seeing the same full hand. You're not turning it to the side. So they're seeing it like a fastball because you get the fat hand coming at you and it just doesn't get there ever.
How many other splitters are even like this in baseball, just in terms of the unpredictability of it, the way you don't always know where it's going? I feel like you don't see it that often.
No, his is unique exactly for that reason. He said it's by mistake. It's not by plan. I've gotten contacted by some MLB analysts that asked me hey, when you talk to him, does he change his grip? Does he do that? And he doesn't. It's just, I think sometimes when he holds on to it a little longer, it does something else. He doesn't plan this out, which it makes it even tougher, I think, because if he doesn't know where it's going, then how's the hitter going to know where it's going? The hitter's got to hit it. He's only throwing it. So it's really, that part's very unique. I think he has the largest spread as far as sometimes it goes arm side, sometimes it goes glove side of any pitch in baseball. So yes, it's definitely a unique pitch. Part of the trick is a low spin, but also part of it is just his grip and how he releases it and how late he holds on to the ball sometimes.
Can only a certain hand size throw this ball? Can only a certain arm slot throw this ball?
It depends. So it used to be everybody thought only people with big hands could throw a splitter. Your Logan Gilbert's got the biggest hand you will ever see on this earth. I mean, he's like Andre
they're
the
enormous.
Giant. Yeah, they're just ridiculous. I don't think Miller's are that huge, which actually maybe adds to the unpredictability of it, because like I talked to Roger Clemens about it, and Clemens obviously had a really good splitter. And he said that some guys with big hands, it's a true splitter because there's no space between your hand and the ball, but where there is space between your hand and your ball. But some of the guys with smaller hands, and he was pointing out, like, he went to Japan and taught everybody the splitter, and they were throwing more fork balls because it's deeper in their hand because their hands were less big. The deeper it is in your hand, the more spin you take off it. And, it's just a variation of a splitter. So you can get it done a bunch of different ways. There's not one hand size that can do it, but your hand size plays into how it performs. And it's not bad or good. It's just different. Like Kodai Singh has got very long fingers, so his is weird. Like, he throws a fork, but, shaking hands with the dude, it's almost like his hand's double jointed. Like, I see why he's got a unique tool in his toolbox, is because his hand is uniquely shaped. You have like someone like Pedro Martinez didn't throw a splitter, but had unique characteristics of his hand that made his changeup really good. So you take advantage of your God-given stuff. Some guys have big hands like Logan Gilbert, smaller hand. Maybe you're just taking a lot of spin off it.
The last time you were on with us, Brian Wu had not even debuted. And now over the last year, he has become, for me, arguably my favorite pitcher in this rotation to watch. And part of it is because of the ridiculous 2 fastballs he throws, how great the stuff is, how effective they are, paired with what everybody talks about with the fastball rise and the crazy, wacky release angle. So all that combined, like, from your eyes, what makes those fastballs so tough for hitters to pick up on?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, it's not Shota Imanaga, but it's somewhat in that same idea. When you have a lower release angle and you have a lot of induced vertical break, you can live at the top of the zone. Hitters just aren't able to figure it out because they're used to seeing average. And when you're above average at some of this stuff, their mind, it just plays tricks on them. They have to consciously tell themselves to swing at a certain spot. And once they do, it opens up your slider and other stuff that operates at the lower part of the zone, which is what, Shota does really well, but Wu does it well too, but mixing his pitches. The other thing, he's just a great dude. Like, that dude is a fantastic guy. Love the way he pitches. I love his aggressiveness. And it's one thing you'll see on the whole staff, right? Like, a lot of aggressive pitchers. And it goes from, that starts on the top down, where it's the Mariners actually affirmatively wanting guys who attack the zone, live in the zone, not afraid to fill it up and just say, here's my best stuff, go hit it. And Wu is a perfect example of that. He's just unrelenting when it comes to throwing. But so many guys on the staff are, right? Like, Castillo is unrelenting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another pitch in Wu's arsenal that you see that has a chance to take a Bryce Miller splitter level jump?
I can see him adding a pitch. Like, I think that's the one thing that you'll see also with Mariners pitchers is they're not afraid to add pitches and tinker with their arsenals. You see guys adding a pitch and all of a sudden it's their best pitch now. He's younger, less experienced. I think he wanted to keep it simple. He also told me something weird about his fastball, which I don't know if it plays into it or not. He grips it differently, just randomly. Like, he doesn't have one specific grip on his fastball. Like, guys will grip their four-seamer a certain way. He may flip it sometimes. And he said he does it just because with the pitch clock, he wants to get used to being in a rush and picking it up. And maybe that changes it for hitters too. I don't know. It could. Maybe they read it differently when he flips the ball inadvertently, something like that. Is there a pitch though? Maybe a splitter. I can see him adding something that would be nasty. I don't know that he has to right now. Like, what happens is once hitters make that adjustment, then you start looking for other things. And Miller did that, right? Like, hitters figured out a little bit about his fastball and they're ready to attack it. So what does he has another pitch that looks like the fastball aggressiveness wise and dives. So I can see him adding something, but right now I don't know. I think he's good as is.
If we're just going to make our way down this rotation and keep going, if we get to Kirby here as the third out of 5 guys, are we getting more knuckleballs? What's your take on this?
He told me he was going to throw more knuckleballs. I was promised knuckleballs and I'm not getting them. What is up with that? Like, that's not fair. I think he struggles with it because he's such a command guy and hates to waste pitches that he doesn't want to waste a pitch that you can't really command.
Mhm.
But come on, give us some knuckleballs, right? Like the one last year was so good.
Yeah, what was your reaction when you saw him throw that pitch?
All right, but the first thing I did was in my mind, I was like, that pitch moved differently than anything else I've seen Kirby throw. That had to be a knuckleball. I slowed it down, figured like nobody called it out when he did it. So I was like, yeah, that's a knuckleball. And then I think I might have even asked him. I was like, dude, what's the story with that? And it was a Wakefield tribute, but he did say he would throw more. I mean,
what's crazy about that too is it wasn't just like he threw it to any old hitter. No, he's facing Corey Seager, and all of a sudden he breaks it out and totally gets him. You're talking about one of the best hitters in the game, and it looked like for the first time he'd ever thrown it, looked like he'd thrown it a million times.
Yeah, and the thing is, he really has. So he told me that he'd been throwing it in Little League, and he knows, like he said, I know it's a filthy pitch. I said, did you know it was nasty when you threw it? He's like, oh yeah. Second I threw it, I knew it was nasty. So he's definitely not shy to say his pitches are nasty when they are. And that was, like you saw it move twice. It was ridiculous. He should throw it more. For just
how insane is
entertainment.
it for a big league pitcher like that who had never thrown a knuckleball in a game like that before? Again, just to randomly do that, just randomly once, it's great, and then we've almost forgotten about it now because he hasn't thrown it.
Yeah, and I mean, he threw a top tier. It won my knuckleball of the year, and Matt Waldron threw knuckleballs all year, and Kirby threw one, and it was legit. Like, I was being objective. It was the filthiest knuckleball, one of the filthier ones you'll ever see. And maybe if we keep saying it, he'll throw it some more. I do think he's been struggling lately. Like, it can be frustrating because his stuff is really good, and we all see it. We all see his command is off the charts. We know he knows how to pitch. And it's just like a bad string of stuff, and sometimes that happens. But maybe the knuckleball is the key to getting back.
Last thing on Kirby, he throws a splitter too, but it's a different profile than Bryce's and Logan's. What is the profile of that pitch?
I haven't checked it recently because I haven't seen him throw it as much. I love that pitch when he was throwing it more. I haven't seen him throw as many filthy ones lately, so I haven't seen if it's changed or not. It's definitely not as low a spin rate as somebody like Gilbert's. To me, jumped out. I almost had a nickname for his because I thought it was unfair. And then he kind of moved away from it a little bit, maybe because it's unpredictability of that pitch too. But I'd love to see him throw that more. Kirby's doesn't have that profile necessarily. I think he copied Gosman's and then just varied it a little bit. Not a bad guy to copy.
No.
So I don't think it profiles as good as Gosman's because very few are, but very few people throw that. But it's certainly a pitch to keep people off his fastball.
Okay, we lied. I actually have one more on Kirby because you talked about he's had a few up and down starts here in the last month or so. What does he have to do for a guy that we've often tabbed having the highest upside in this rotation? What does he have to do to take another step forward from where he already is?
Yeah. So talking to hitters say they like hitting against George Kirby because they know he's going to be in the zone. Like, that is the feedback. And Kirby would say that too. He loves being in the zone. So maybe some more unpredictability. I know Cal loves calling fastballs. He loves George Kirby's fastball, and he calls what he doesn't think he can hit. So, I love that about the way they work it. But it might be good to throw in some other stuff just to keep hitters a little off balance. They may not square it up, but putting a ball in play, there can be bad things that happen. And if you live in the zone the whole time and aren't really mixing it up as much, that could come back to bite you as it has done, because hitters they're not uncomfortable. They're sitting there going, all right, I know it's going to be, I may not square it up, but I'm not going to be ducking out of the way of it. I'm not going to be swinging at balls. I know I'm going to be swinging at something that's a strike.
Mm-hmm.
On to the next pitcher in this rotation, Rob. Logan Gilbert, the ultimate tinker, adds pitches. He's got all these weird devices in his bag as he continues to evolve as a pitcher, seemingly adding something every year. Last year it was the splitter, and we've seen him bring it over to this year. But he's also got this cutter now, and it grades out supremely well. What does it say about Logan Gilbert being a guy that is so willing to add these things into his arsenal, and they all turned out to be pretty good?
He's a star. Like, Logan Gilbert is a stud. I expect him to be in Cy Young contention one of these next few years because of exactly that. Just as you think you figured him out, he's adding something, tinkering. he does not, like, even his splitter, which I thought was filthy, he's still trying to tinker with that. He was, I was talking with him. He's like, if you ever interview Yamamoto, let's see his splitter. Like, he wants to improve everything. He wants to borrow from everybody. And some guys can do that. Some guys get sidetracked chasing all these pitches. Not him. Like, he is a combination of a tinkerer and a perfectionist. He wants to be the best pitcher on the planet. He's very aggressive on the mound and a very good dude off the mound. I think the world of him as far as pitching talent. I think he's extremely good and a top tier pitcher.
I was kind of thinking about this nickname as we were preparing some questions for you. I almost think of him as like a mad scientist in a certain way, between the huge bag of tools that he carries around with him, which not a ton of guys do, and then paired with what TJ was saying and what you were saying about he is always, he almost looks at pitching as a science where, again, like he's always mixing things up. He's always looking to add or improve, like we were talking about, where it almost feels like he could get in a lab and kind of just dissect everything about himself. So, like, I know you're a big nickname guy. Am I that far off in saying he's like almost a mad scientist in that way?
Yeah, he definitely is. Like, that's absolutely, he doesn't look like a scientist though. So, like, that's the one you see Greg Maddux, you say, all right, that guy looks like an accountant or professor. Hey, the professor's a good nickname. You look at Logan Gilbert and he's a giant dude who just looks like he's going to, but he's absolutely a very thoughtful, smart pitcher who also happens to throw gas and tinker a lot. I mean, I think the mad professor is not a bad thing. If he looked more like it, it would stick better though. I was trying to come up with a nickname for a splitter, and I was thinking, like, we had two choices, either like the Trident or the Albatross. I think the Albatross, because it's an awkward pitch, and Albatross are awkward birds and fly and glide and then drop and don't have a lot of flapping. And his splitter has very low spin rate. But Trident fits with the Mariner. Both of them do. Like the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, Albatross, definitely part of it. But I don't know. Something along those lines of not a bad nickname. I mean, I think he is a tinkerer and a mad scientist. Absolutely.
I want to get back to his cutter here for a second, because I think it's so interesting the way Logan pitches. If you compare it to the rest of the rotation, every other pitcher in this Mariners rotation throws a sinker or a two-seam fastball, something to get the ball on the ground. Logan doesn't. He said it doesn't really work with his arm slot, doesn't work with how he pitches, doesn't like how it comes out of his hand. So instead he adds this cutter. When you look at this cutter, what does that bring in comparison to the two-seam fastball?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a glove side pitch instead of an arm side pitch. He may be a guy who just doesn't like contact and wants to, there are definitely guys, like a sinker is more of a pitch. If you want contact, soft contact, get it put in play, because they never profile as a huge swing and miss pitch. They're good to look at, but they don't get a ton of swings and misses. Cutters can keep people off his fastball, and it's an aggressive pitch. So he may just feel like it works better, both with his mechanics and mental and mindset. The splitter, aggressive pitch, a cutter, an aggressive pitch, and both keep people off his fastball, which he would say, and talking to Cal Raleigh, I don't know if he would say that. He wants Cal Raleigh to call more fastballs, and Cal's like, I don't really like your fastball. So it's. I think the cutters may be a way of keeping hitters off that.
Is his slider almost underrated at this point?
I think he's overall underrated, but yeah, I think his slider is underrated. I don't know that any of his pitches, like people know he's a really good pitcher, but I don't think people are singing the praises of any of his pitches. To me, I think his splitter is underrated. I think his splitter is an extremely good pitch. I think his slider is an extremely good pitch. He's just a very good pitcher. But I guess identity-wise, that nickname Mad Scientist, he needs an identity for everybody out there to say, this is what Logan Gilbert is, right? Like, that's how you take off in terms of popularity is, Brian Woo's got the Ric Flair thing or the Wu-Tang Clan. Kirby's got his command thing. Castillo's got his, the fist pump. Gilbert does the dismissal thing when he's done with the hitter and the twirling thing he does. Something to give the character of the guy and sum it up very quickly is a way to get him more attention as the pitcher he is.
Now to Castillo, Rob. I wanted another one of your reactions. When Cal's putting down 47 consecutive fastballs for Luis last season, like how much of like a fuck you is that to the hitters when it's like, good luck?
It's fantastic. And Cal's logic on that was, I just wanted to see how many he could throw in a row. Like, they weren't hitting it, so I'm just going to keep throwing it. great. Like, it was one of the highlights of last year for me because I love Castillo, for one, because he's a very easy guy to read. Like, you see the confidence on that guy when he gets out of an inning with his La Piedra fist pump thing. The man is just a showman. And then that was part of the show, right? You're watching these fastballs. I started watching them like, I don't remember him throwing anything other than a fastball. I'm going to go back and count them. And I just started going through and I'm like, holy crap, he's thrown 47 consecutive fastballs. They must be doing this on purpose. And lo and behold, they were. We found out during spring training, but didn't know. Like, I love it. Like, give me my best versus your best. Let's go.
Is it interesting how he's evolved over the last couple years, where for so long his changeup was always his best pitch, and now all of a sudden it's his fastball?
I love, like, people were always requesting his changeup as far, like, you got to get Luis Castillo's changeup. It's one of the filthiest pitches in baseball. He's all but abandoned it for his fastball, which is, it's going backwards. Most people, as they get, they age or whatever, go away from their fastball and develop all these other pitches. For him, it's like they finally realized his fastball was a unique pitch because of his arm slot and stuff, that he can live up in the zone with it. And he just changed it. Like, he minimized one of the best pitches in baseball for another best pitch in baseball, and it's worked out really well.
What do you get when you don't have extension? We talk about the outlier extension with Logan Gilbert's fastball and how much velocity that adds to his pitch. Luis is the complete opposite. How does that work?
It takes all kinds. When he's got a lower release point, which it still enables him to have more time with a shorter extension, to have more time for a hitter to recognize his pitch and then swing under it because it's feeling like it's elevating. So maybe it works to his advantage. It definitely might help a changeup, right? Like, if you have a shorter extension, it takes longer for that pitch to get there anyway. And now you're adding a little bit more deception by having it go slower because of your changeup. Everybody uses whatever they got to their advantage. And it also helps, like, in a rotation, having different guys. Like, you see that with relievers, different arm slots and different sides, lefty, righty, high arm slot, low arm slot. Same thing with starters. If you get used to one guy and the next guy that comes the next day is totally different, it could mess you up. So, I mean, I like what they do as far as varying all that as well.
Want to touch on a couple relievers here too quickly. No Mariners fans have gotten to see Gregory Santos throw yet. However, when he gets back, what should excite them? He caught my eye just because his stuff was unbelievably filthy. You're talking about a guy that's triple digits with crazy movement. Like, I'm trying to compare him to somebody. There's not a lot of guys that get that type of movement, especially the arm side movement. So no one's coming to mind. He's just absolute filth and totally underrated because nobody knows who he is. Like, he's one of those guys that pitched in obscurity, and I'm watching him going, this guy's filthy. Why isn't everybody talking about him? And they weren't. And apparently the Mariners noticed that too, that he was a filthy dude. So expect pure filth and a guy that throws really hard, and that you'll see it because the movement kind of jumps off the page when you see it.
Santos seems like he's going to mirror a lot like what we've seen from Andres Munoz this season. When Andres had his first breakout season, it was four-seam fastball and slider. Now he's essentially sinker and slider. How does that profile change with him going from the four-seam now to one of the nastiest two-seamers you'll see?
Yeah, like, that kind of blew my mind because I'm looking at him as a four-seamer, and then I'm looking at these pitches that are crazy arm side movement, and he can get swing and miss on it because of the velo. And you're right, it does. That's a good point. So to me, the movement that you see out of Munoz is what you'll see out of Santos, with a little bit more drop on his sinker. Like, I've seen some that just look like a 100-mile-an-hour changeup. So not a bad comp. And I do think, as far as Munoz changing how he's gone at, it's worked for him. Like, to see, some pitching coaches say, do what you do, keep doing that, pat you on the back. And some guys are saying they explore things. And I think the Mariners are good at both taking what somebody's good at, but also saying, have you ever tried this? Have you ever tried this? And not telling pitchers not to experiment. And then maybe sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. More than not, you're seeing with them, it does work. And Munoz is a great example of that.
we've got two fun questions to wrap up with you, Rob. Number one, we know you're a big Ryan Bliss fan. As of time of recording this, he just made his debut. So for all Mariners fans who have only seen about a game of him so far, why should Mariners fans fall in love with Ryan Bliss?
Dude, my son played travel ball with him for 2 years. He always came up big in every moment. Humble dude. Every single parent of every player on the team would trade their kid for him every day of the week. Just the nicest kid. I remember the last day, he had to leave early from one of the tournaments, and it was the last tournament we had, and just came by and shook every parent's hand on the way out. Like, we're all watching a game, and he's just like, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm leaving. Unbelievable. His parents are great. He's a great kid, wants to be a role model. Like, he wants to be out there in Seattle doing things in public. I mentioned that to the Mariners PR too. I'm like, don't be afraid to call on him because he wants to be that guy. He just really is. Like, he is Mr. Baseball. The other thing is we always compared him to a Mookie Betts or a Jose Altuve because he's not a tall dude, but he had a lot of power. And then it so happens that his first game, now his first play was a pop-up from Altuve. Mm-hmm. Then his first two at-bats, he hit the ball to Altuve. So it's like, I'm watching this, I'm going, it's like full circle, automatic. Like, this is one of the guys that he idolized, and he's catching the ball off, the first play he makes. And then his first two at bats were hits to Altuve. So it's really, it's awesome to see. Great kid. Everybody should be a fan of him, and just watch him and root for him.
Last thing from us, Rob. We spend so much time talking about pitching. Is there a hitter you enjoy watching more than anyone else?
I want them all to strike. I like watching. I like watching Soto, for example. I like his eye. I think his playfulness on, like, he's a smart ass. He takes a pitch and he does his Soto shuffle, but he respects the game a lot. Usually he knows the strike zone better than the umpire. He'll punish balls that are but he also will tip his hat to a pitcher. He'll nod his head and stuff. So that's the type of stuff I like. I like that competition between a hitter and pitcher. And I think he's kind of the mark of being a good pitcher because he's such a good hitter knowing the strike zone that I think pitchers take it as a badge of honor to face him and get him out. So that's a guy that I think, some people hate him. That's okay. You're allowed to hate whoever. But as far as respect, you got to respect getting that dude out, and you want him on your team because he's that guy. He's always going to give you a good at bat.
Full transparency, Lyle, I guessed you were going to say Shohei because he also pitches.
Yeah, I mean, that's too easy though, right? Like, of course. He's one of the few hitters I actually will tweet because he also does. And he also, the thing I love about Shohei is ability to get to pitches that you never see hit and then hit them out of the ballpark. That's nuts. Like, it screws with pitchers' minds because they're throwing pitches that nobody hits, up and in. Shohei's going yard. Down and away, he's just flipping it over the fence. Like, yeah, very talented guy. But he'll strike out more. Like, I think Soto with the competition is a thing that jumps out at me if I'm looking at a pure hitter.
Rob, this has been great. No one breaks down pitching like you do, and we really look forward to seeing your content on our Twitter feeds and on YouTube and wherever throughout the rest of the season because you are the best. Thanks so much for taking some time to join us here today.
Thank you, and keep supporting this great pitching staff, guys.
We always love having Pitching Ninja on. Appreciate all his time. Hopefully you guys learned something about the Mariners pitching staff in that conversation. I know we did, and if you need any more reason to be a Ryan Bliss fan, I think he gave it to you. So that'll just about wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. If you want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download, leave us a 5-star review, leave a written review, all that good stuff. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and check us out on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.